Welcome to a brand new episode of the Spiraling Podcast. I am your host, Jackson Wallace. I got my friend, my buddy, my pal, Jason Holland here with me. Jason, how you doing, man?
Good guys, how are y'all?
Hey, we're doing okay. Listen, for the time of this recording, you guys know, me and Jason are banging out several episodes, okay? We're going back to back to back to back. We got another one we're recording tonight and then one tomorrow morning. We had one we recorded yesterday. So you guys are going to see all of this kind of jumbled together in the same time frame, even though it's going to be spread out over the next couple of weeks. But we hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season. We're getting closer to Christmas. Actually, this one's going to come out right before Christmas, Jason. I think it's going to come out at the time early next week for us. So anyway, we have a wonderful new guest on today. And by the way, if you guys ever need guests for podcast guest connection on Facebook, great place to go. It really is. Like, people comment like crazy. It's super active. If you ever need a guest, podcast guest connection. That's how I met Ann. We have Ann Livingston on the show. Ann is a published author and spiritual mentor. She just recently ended a 3-year nomadic journey, living solely based on her intuition. She teaches others how to embody their power in light. Her passion is in teaching others how to live an authentic, soul-aligned life. She also mentors those who are committed to speaking their truth while sharing their story with the world. Ann, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. We mentioned a little bit in the pre-show. It's that time of year. We're feeling good. Right, it's festive outside, and for those of y'all who don't know, listeners, whatever, I'm from Texas, and Ann mentioned she's from Phoenix, and we take any cold weather that we can get, okay, because it just gets way too hot in the summer. We never complain about the cold, so I'm having a great time.
I'm like outside all the time. I'm like, it's winter, I'm outside, it's always sunny, and
yes.
It's sunny like 300 days out of the year or something in Phoenix, so yeah, no complaints.
No complaints at all. Well, Ann, thank you for coming on. I guess I'll just kind of give you a little introduction for us. I'm Jackson, so host of the show Spiraling, and this is, of course, Jason. Jason is the founder of the Holland Foundation and of Spiraling Ministries. Basically, what we want to do is we want to. Jason has a story, wrote a book, and we want to provide hope and healing for anybody going through their own problems. It could be, mental health problems. It could be drugs, addiction, things like that. We're trying to provide counseling services to those who need it as well. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit of our story. I'm hoping, though, maybe you could share us a little bit of yours.
Wouldn't it be weird if I'm like, I have no story to share?
So what's up? What's happening?
So yeah, like you said in my intro, I just ended a 3-year nomadic journey.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what happened, so my background is in early childhood education. So I was a teacher for 7 years.
Very cool.
I taught in Florida, Texas, we talked about the fact that I lived in Houston for 2 years, and then I moved to Chicago. And my first year in Chicago teaching, there were 50 school closures, and I ended up losing my teaching career.
Oh no.
And I was like, what do you do with an early childhood degree,
Mm-hmm.
And so I became a nanny. But at the point that I became a nanny, I was like, this is not my calling. Like, I loved the children, I loved what I did, but I knew that wasn't my purpose in life. And so I ended up becoming an entrepreneur. I became a coach, and I started working with people in their own health and wellness journey and really looking at the patterns and the stories that were holding them back. Well, during all of that, I basically hit my own rock bottom at the end of a relationship, entered into my dark night of the soul, my spiritual awakening, and I got the intuitive hit in February 2017 to sell my shit and hit the road, ultimately.
Yeah.
And during all of that, as that relationship was ending, I was working with a coach who was really bringing to my attention that I was severely codependent. And I was like, no, I'm just in a relationship. Like, everything I'm experiencing is totally normal. And he was like, no, and you are completely dependent on this person for your happiness. And when I started to unpack that, I started to realize I am addicted to this person's love. I am addicted to men. I am addicted to alcohol. I was like, all of a sudden, everything kind of blew up in my face. I was like, wow, I thought I just had an addictive personality, right?
Right.
And then I realized that no, I'm actually addicted to anything external that I am using to fill some sort of void in my life. And
gotcha.
So when I then became a nomad, it was this very difficult but empowering journey of really cultivating unconditional faith and cultivating a relationship with God I never had before, and really understanding the power of consistently coming back home to myself. And through that journey, I basically healed all of my addictions.
Very, very cool. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. For sure. Okay.
It's simple, but obviously it's deep.
Yeah, no, definitely. So my first question is what, and forgive me for my ignorance, what exactly is like the 3-year nomadic journey? Can you describe kind of that process of what that looks like?
Yeah, so when I left Chicago, so I sold everything. I had no car and I had 2 cats. So it made no logical sense at all, right? Everyone was like, this is really stupid. I'm like, I don't know, God's telling me to do it. So let's just see what happens. And so I rented a car from Chicago to Mississippi to stay with a friend. My intention was to stay for 3 weeks. I stayed for 8 months because I hit financial rock bottom. My business hit rock bottom. I went into even like darkness. I went into depression. Like, it was just spiraling downward. And as I was working through healing all of that, then finally 8 months later, I left Mississippi. Well, for the rest of the 3-year journey, I moved solely based off of my intuition. So basically it was wherever I felt magnetically pulled within my body. So it's like, when you have like a natural attraction to someone or something, you feel that internal pull, right? So I was paying attention to that feeling in my body and where in the country I was feeling drawn to.
Okay.
And so when I felt that pull to a place, later I pulled in an atlas and a pendulum to kind of double check, I was using tools to double check my intuition. But then I went onto the Airbnb website and I started to kind of read the energy in the pictures and again, paid attention to where am I magnetically feeling pulled through, in all of these places on the Airbnb website. And so that's ultimately how I traveled around for 3 years.
I love Airbnb. Just in general, I like it. Me and my family use it all the time. If we're going out somewhere, or I'll go on a trip sometimes with my dad, and we'd go somewhere for business. And instead of staying in a hotel, Airbnb if you can. By the way,
it's the best. It is the best.
No free shout outs. No free shout outs on the podcast, but shout out to Airbnb. Absolutely love that. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So you said you started your career early childhood education.
Yep.
Which resonates with me quite a lot. For those who don't know, for about 10 years or so, I worked at my mother's, daycare. And so,
oh, nice.
Yeah. And so she owned and operated that for like 20 something years. I think it was like 25, 26, something around there. And we recently sold the business and she was going through part of a struggle of her own. But, so that really resonated with me, that she worked with childcare. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And it's kind of the foundation of what I do with my clients. So I do a lot of inner child healing and learning how to reparent ourselves and looking at the subconscious, and in the spiritual community, it's called shadow work. Like, it's called all these different things, but basically it's looking at all of those old stories that are holding you back, the old beliefs, the old patterns. And a lot of those things do actually feed into your addiction. And so what I learned when I was in the process of healing, and I was looking specifically at my alcoholism, I realized that there was this little girl within me who didn't feel seen, didn't feel loved, didn't feel heard, didn't feel worthy. And I was always looking outside of myself for someone or something that was going to make her feel better. Of course, I didn't have that level of awareness, but that's ultimately what it was. And so when I went through, really journaling out and listening to what does she have to say? What does she need me to know? And the more love I gave her, I wasn't white knuckling. I think a lot of people kind of like white knuckle it through recovery. And I naturally no longer had the desire to drink. It just went away. It
just went away from that. Yeah, that was actually going to be my next. Was called my follow up. So you said you were addicted to alcohol. What was that? So how long was that for you? What was that period in your life like? When did it start? I mean, again, these are personal questions. If you don't want to answer,
no, it's fine.
Go ahead. But
I'm open.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I started drinking before I was 21. So, it was, I can't remember exactly, but I know it was before I was 21 when I was my freshman year in college. So I went to the University of Iowa my freshman year, and I flunked out because I was drinking and partying all the time. I didn't go to class, that was my life. And then even when I moved to Gainesville, Florida, same thing. I was still drinking, but at least I was going to class. So I was, getting good grades. But
Right.
I was always drinking. I needed to drink in order to have the confidence to talk to men. I needed to drink in order to have the confidence to even talk to like women who I thought were more intelligent or were more successful. It gave me that confidence. So that just continued. Well, then years later, when I was in Houston, I met my now ex-husband,
Yeah.
and looking back, I'm like, he was an alcoholic, but because his behavior exceeded mine, I thought mine was normal. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
And so I found myself, when I sat down and really reflected back, I was like, I kept dating or eventually getting married to someone whose behavior made mine look normal. Because as long as mine looked normal, I didn't have to look at it. I could project my shit onto them and constantly try to fix them, right?
Yeah.
Your drinking is the problem. Your behavior is the problem. When deep down, my little child was like, no, please stop drinking because it's painful, and then my next
Yeah.
relationship, which was the beginning of, like, the ending of that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening. I kept telling him, I was like, you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic. And I was monitoring all of his drinking behavior, and I realized that I was actually screaming for help because I wanted to actually stop drinking.
Gotcha. Jason, did you have any like is similar feelings towards with you with your drinking, or was it just like you just like did you need the and again I don't want to speak for you, did you need the alcohol to like just to feel better or to feel confident, or what was, I guess maybe we can help Anne with a little bit of your story.
Yeah, so mine, mine wasn't really to feel confident or to talk to anybody. Mine was drinking to make myself feel better. Like it was, alcohol to me was, it was filling a void in my life or erasing memories in my life by using alcohol. Because when I drank to get drunk. I drank to black out, and it was really just to erase memories that I had because I suffered a lot growing up with dysfunctional family, in and out of juvenile detention. Um, Finally led to my incarceration, and all of those memories that I had, um, alcohol was to make those go away. Is if that makes sense.
Yep, it does, because I definitely had moments where it was like I would go into a deep depression, especially at the end of a relationship. At any end of a relationship, my my habit was to stop eating. I was smoking at the time, so I'd be smoking like a pack of cigarettes a day, and I would drink at least a bottle of wine a night. It was just not eat, drink as much as possible, and try to erase the pain. So I totally resonate with that.
Yeah, and for me, it was as I got older, it seemed like the alcohol got worse, the drinking got worse, and I was in therapy for a very long time. I'm still in therapy, but it's still now I don't even have the craving to drink alcohol. But it seems like now that I'm sober, I'm able to deal with those memories and compart
Compartmentalize.
compartmentalize,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
compartmentalize those memories to be able to not focus on them and not make myself have any feelings towards them. It's kind of like I've gone numb to it,
Right.
and it's and that was part of the therapy, the mock funeral that I had from my parents. That was just a therapy to help with how I was feeling of abandonment. My parents abandoned me when I was a kid, not in the sense of like gave me up for adoption or something like that. It was they turned their eyes and just let me be arrested and let me go to jail. and they even called the police on me several times for stuff that was so stupid. And uh, dealing with that as an adult, it made me feel like I did not have anybody there in my life that would love me the way that I wanted to be loved.
Yep.
And my wife, I've been with my wife since I was 17. We've never had a break in our relationship, and I always felt the love from her, but I always felt like she was going to turn on me at any time. And she's never turned on me, but it's still, that's what I was used to. It was
Yeah.
being close to somebody, and just one day they turn their back on you. And that's part of my childhood trauma. We eventually decided that I was diagnosed with PTSD because of my incarceration, and it took a while to be able to function normally in society. Even though I was a very successful businessman, my personal life was always in chaos. Something was always going on. There was always drama, and it took a long time to stop that behavior, stop drinking, stop doing the drugs, and get on a path of normalcy in life. And I finally accomplished that, and it's a hell of a lot better than always. Am I going to drink too much today and piss my wife off, or
Right.
am I going to drink today and get in the car and get arrested? There's just living in that moment where you're so dependent on alcohol, um, and I would start drinking at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I got done for the day, I was blacked out. So I was driving around all day. I had a open container in the vehicle at all times, so it was always a stressor. Am I going to get caught? Because if I get caught, I'm going to jail. Um, so that living that kind of life is it's scary and it's very stressful. And once you can overcome that, life gets so much better and
Yeah.
life gets easy. And the stressors that I have to deal with now, I still have a very stressful life. I'm a small business owner. My business that I do run is a 24/7 company. Uh, so I'm always on call, and that's stressful. Getting the 1 o'clock in the morning phone call from the corporate office that we have a job, and I have to get up and deal with it. Um, that's stressful. Um, the nature of our business is dealing with people who have lost their homes or have a flooded home or are dealing with some kind of major major life change,
Mm.
and that gets projected on us as the first responders coming in to help them. So it's still stressful, but dealing with it has gotten a lot easier because drugs and alcohol are not involved.
Right.
So
That makes a lot of sense. And like, yeah, for me, it was like once I learned how to feel my feelings, because that was really a big piece was I was avoiding feeling my feelings. Once I
mhm.
learned how to do that and I learned that my feelings wouldn't actually kill me, then I felt like I could face anything head on. And so I have a similar experience in just the fact that, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that like life in and of itself hasn't gotten easier, but it's that I now have tools in order to manage whatever happens in life.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
No, you're
For
good, man.
me, yeah, for me, it wasn't. So when I decided I was going to go into sobriety and stop drinking and drugging, it was January 28th, 2018. So I'm coming up on my 3 year sobriety birthday. But um, and I don't know if you know this about me, but 3 months after I was in sobriety, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. So for me, life did not get easier at all going into sobriety. Life got much harder for me. And I talked about in the last episode the cancer and the
Hmm.
surgeries and the chemotherapy. That was the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life. But at no time during that process did I ever say, maybe I should just go have a drink and make this go away. I never had those thoughts. I hit the issues head on. I prayed. I built my relationship with God, and I came out a better person. And I'm in the position I am today. I'm stronger than I have ever been today, and I'm proud of where I am today. So that's it.
Very cool, very cool. Let's turn this over to kind of like how we started healing. And my question is for you, Ann. You mentioned earlier that you met a coach, right?
Yep.
And they started helping you and helping you kind of raise your awareness. How did you first come in contact with that person, and how exactly did they start changing you or start making you a little more aware, I guess is the proper way to say it?
Yeah, so I actually started in traditional therapy because
Okay.
while I was in that relationship, I started to realize, so years ago, like 20 years ago, I experienced sexual abuse. And
Okay.
although I had been going through my healing process with that, I realized that while in this relationship, there were still triggers that were coming up that needed to be healed. And so I decided to seek out therapy to help with that. That was my original intention.
Yeah.
And I had 4 sessions with this woman, and I think that therapy absolutely has its place. My stepmom is a retired
Sure.
therapist. I've experienced therapy in really positive terms, but at that moment in my life, I felt like I was rehashing shit that I didn't need to rehash. I
Yeah.
felt like I was just kind of sitting and not really going anywhere. And so after 4 sessions, I was like, therapy is not for me. And so I was like, let me seek out a coach. And I had a friend who was actually working with this man in Kansas City, and luckily he would do Skype sessions. And so I emailed him and I just said, these are all the things I'm struggling with. This is what I'm wanting to heal. These are like I was extremely self-aware. And so I was
Right.
like, I have this, and this. I just don't know how to stop doing what I'm doing. I'm sabotaging this relationship that I don't want to sabotage. And so we had one call, and he kind of told me what he does and learned a little bit about me. And he asked, he said, Ann, I only work with 10s. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say you fall? And I said, I'm an 11. I will do whatever it takes. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so he really started with, I'm trying to remember, but because I know he sent me a worksheet that I started filling out. I think first I looked at my life and just kind of like the ups and downs. It was like a timeline of my life, like
Yeah.
what were all the things that had happened from, birth to then. What were the peaks, what were the valleys, and what did it look like mapped out? And through our conversations and me just kind of sharing with him what was going on, he kept saying, like, Ann, you're thinking that you're a victim, and like, yeah, shit has happened to you, you have been victimized, but like,
Right.
you're not a victim. And he started telling me, because I would talk about the fact that I didn't trust my partner, and he was like, it's not that you don't trust your partner, you don't trust yourself. And it was like everything kept coming back to personal responsibility. And so that was really eye-opening to me. And when he started to talk to me about codependency and being responsible for my own happiness, like my mind was totally blown, because I was like, what is the purpose of being in a relationship if it's not for the other person to make you happy? Like it really did not make
Right.
any sense to me back then. And he was like, the purpose of being in a relationship is to love someone else. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like that was bizarre to me. And he's like, right, you come in whole and complete, and then you give your love to someone else. And I was like, that is just, it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
And so he had me start to list out things that I was passionate about. Like he asked, when was the last time you felt passion? And I thought way back when I was in a band, and I was like, I'm super passionate about music. And he was like, think about what that feels like in your body. That's what feeling feels like. And so he just kind of helped me connect to like, what was the feeling that I was trying to embody, and what else in my life did I feel that way about? And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, cooking is something that I feel passionate about, going on walks, being in nature.
Yeah.
And so I just started to incorporate those types of things into my life. And although I still wasn't in a space where like I still would have rather done it with my partner, I was like, okay, at least I won't die. I can do these things and it's like kind of fun, and so I just started there.
Very, very cool. So yeah, so you meet that coach. He's helping you kind of connect the dots in certain ways, and then that proved very helpful. Then you decide to just drop your stuff, go on this journey. So I'm curious, what did the people in your life, family and friends, what did they think when you told them, hey, this is what I'm doing?
Oh, they thought I was crazy. So I didn't tell anyone for like a good 2 months. Like I was kind of like dropping hints. I was like dropping hints on Facebook, I was like, I'm looking at Airbnbs, but I'm not telling anyone why,
Right, just little nuggets of info.
Yeah, and then I was just like starting to like get rid of things, because that was the first step, really, was like, let me start to get rid of the little things in my life, like the normal things that you would donate to Goodwill, right? It was just like, let me start there. No one will think that's weird, and that doesn't feel too scary. But as I started getting rid of like some, not large items, but larger items, I thought, I'm going to have to tell people at some point. Like, if I'm actually going to do this, I'm going to have to tell people.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember exactly how I told them. Or like what I said, but I did tell them. And not super supportive.
Okay, yeah.
My family loves me. I know they love me, which is probably why they weren't super supportive. But because and what I tell people is, like, when you have something like that, when you have like a vision or a calling or an intuitive hit, like no one can see what you, like no one can see your vision, no one can feel what you feel. And
your
so
perspective, right.
Right. And so I just kept saying, like, I don't know why, I just know that I'm supposed to. And I kind of, I had an idea that it was for something bigger, but I just didn't know. And there was definitely some conflict around like some of the family items that I was getting rid of. That was not super popular.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I mean, now I guess, now that I've rooted down, they're like, it wasn't so bad. But no, I did have some family members who really talked to me like every single week. We'd FaceTime every single week. And so they saw my ups and downs. They saw my growth. They saw my transformation. I was talking to them about kind of these aha moments that I was having. And even though it wasn't comfortable for them to watch, because there were moments where I had no money. There were moments where I had no food. I always had a roof over my head. But there were moments where I would leave one Airbnb and I didn't know where I was going to stay that night. And I really had to practice surrender. And there were so many moments where I had to say to people, like, I know that it doesn't look the way that any of us thought it was going to look, but I know that this is on purpose. I know I'm on the right path. I know that God is using this for some reason,
right? Even
if I can't see why in this moment. And so I just had to stick to that, but no, people were not super supportive of that journey.
What were some of the I guess, is it weird to say highlights? I guess it's like, what were some of like the highlights of your journey? Some of your ahas, some of your, big moments for you.
I would say one of the biggest lessons I learned, God, there are a lot, but one of the biggest lessons I learned was that I couldn't react to the contrast. So like when something appeared to not be working out, instead of reacting and trying to solve the problem, I had to just kind of like take a step back. And so here's an example. So when I was in Colorado in 2019, I left one Airbnb. I had $9 in my bank account. I didn't know where I was staying that night. And I had a friend who actually had hotel points. And she's like, I can put you up in a hotel for a week. And I was like, well, I don't have enough money for the pet fee, And she was like, okay, well, if money comes in or whatever, like I'll totally put you up. And I was like, all right. So I drove to this park, cats in the back seat, all my stuff in my car.
Yeah.
And I drive to this park and I'm sitting there and I'm like eating lunch. And I was like, okay, you have $9 in your bank account. You have food that you're eating right now. If you need to go to the grocery store, you have enough food for tonight, tomorrow morning, like, worst case scenario, you have to sleep in your car. It's not the end of the world. Like, we can just pretend that we really want to camp in the car. Like, I was just like talking myself through this.
Sure.
And my ego, my fear kept saying, reach out to that person who, this person owes you money and this person owes you money, like reach out to them. And I was like, that's trying to solve a problem. If I already had the money in my bank account, and then I wouldn't be reaching out to these people who owe me money. So I sat there and I just focused on like really paying attention to whether I was getting that impulsive hit to do something out of fear, like ask someone who owed me money, or was God telling me to just like wait, just wait. And so I kept hearing like, just wait. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do? You know? And I did, and I waited, and I like calmed my body down, calmed my nervous system down. And I was just like, let me feel into, I already have the money in my bank account. I'm going to be sleeping in the hotel tonight. All is going to be well. It's going to be great to stay in the hotel for a week. Just focusing on that. And it was within 20 minutes, one of the people who owed me money, never contacted them. They sent me the money.
Wow. Just out of the blue like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Very cool. So you go through your journey, go through your process, and you become more self-aware and everything, and you're good to go. So what happens after? At what point did you decide, okay, my journey is complete? Not that your journey could ever really be complete in the grand sense of the word, but what are you just like, okay, I'm ready to settle. I'm ready to stay still.
Okay, so I was guided to Phoenix a couple times. And every time, when I say that I was guided based off of my intuition, I really mean like there were places I did not want to go, but my intuition is like, you're going there. And my mind was like, I am not. I will go somewhere else. And Phoenix was one of those places I didn't want to come to. I had visited in 2015 and I said, I'll never come back. I just didn't care for it. And I was here in 2018 for a month and a half and enjoyed it. But then in 2019, I was guided back and I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Sedona, yes. Phoenix, no.
Sure.
And so I was guided to Phoenix. I came to Phoenix in October of 2019 and first stayed in an Airbnb. And then from there, I remembered that I have a friend here who I hadn't met in person, but we had been online friends for a little while. And so my intuition was like, reach out to her and meet up. So we met up for coffee, really hit it off, had a great time. And she said, I'm actually going to be out of the country for a couple of weeks. If you need a place to stay, feel free to stay at my place. So that all worked out. Well, then when she came back, she was like, feel free to stay as long as you want. And I was like, well, let's talk about that because, I don't have a home. So so I ended up staying there for 8 months. I stayed with my friend in Mississippi for 8 months. I stayed with my friend here for 8 months. And it just naturally kind of worked out. Well, then around end of May, beginning of June of 2020, I started to get the intuitive hit that I was like, it's time to leave Phoenix. It's time to move on. And so I decided to go to Utah. And so I went to Utah for a month. And within my first week of being in Utah, I really missed Phoenix, which I did not anticipate at all. I was like crying and I was like, I want to go back to Phoenix. And so I really realized once I had gone to Utah that I was like, I want a home. I want that stability. I've been doing this for 3 years. And so my entire month in Utah, I started kind of making the preparation of, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, cause I didn't have enough money for like first and last month's rent. My credit wasn't super fantastic, so I was like, how am I going to sign a lease? And I was like, well, I'll start. And I actually didn't want a lease at that point. I was like, I'll just stay in Airbnbs in Phoenix, hopefully long-term. And so I started, preparing for that. By the time that the day that I left Utah, I realized that it was exactly 3 years to the date that I had left Chicago.
Wow.
And I was like, that can't even be planned, like I had no clue. And so when I returned to Phoenix, I returned with the intention of making it a home base.
Sure.
And I stayed in Airbnbs for like another 2 months, I think, kind of circling around. And then I was like, I want a home. I want like a home where I don't have someone else's stuff, and I can actually start to build my own space again. And so I signed a lease, a 6-month lease, but a lease next to a really good friend of mine. And so now I'm officially in building mode.
Very, very cool. That's funny how you mentioned 3 years to the day all coming full circle. I think that's awesome.
It was pretty cool.
Very cool. So now you're in Phoenix. You got your lease. You're set up. So what is it that how do you occupy your time now? You spent 3 years going around the country. So what do you do?
I do exactly what I did while I was traveling around.
Very cool. I love that.
So when I was traveling, a lot of people are like, how do you make money? When I was traveling around, I said, well, I have a business. I've had a business for 7 years. But I'm an author, like you mentioned at the beginning. I'm a published author. So
cool.
My first book is the first book of a 3-book series, basically about my journey. So I'm a published author. I'm also a podcaster, and I also work with clients. I'm a mentor.
Love that. Love that. Very, very cool. Well, Ann, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wonderful story and kind of giving us another unique perspective on hope and healing, and that's what we're all about here. So
thank you so much. It was fun.
Super thankful that you came on through. But before we kind of wrap this up, I mean, you have the camera right here. Where can the people find you? Where can they come see you? The camera's yours.
You can find everything on AnnLivingstonCoaching.com. I'm also on social media at Ann the Nomad.
And the Nomad. Guys, do us a favor. Go ahead, check her out. And like I said, thank you for coming on. Jason, do you have anything else before we kind of wrap it all up?
No, that's and I had never met anybody that claimed to be a nomad. So I learned so much from you. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if I was still in addiction, I would probably do something like that. If I didn't have a family, if I didn't have kids and my wife, I think that would be be something like that's right up my alley. But yeah, I'm not in that position. So
it was powerful. I mean, people kind of are like, you really grew. I grew at an exponential rate. You just evolve so quickly. You heal so quickly because you don't really have any other option. You're faced with all your fears all the time. Yeah,
you're so self-aware, which I think is very cool and very powerful. Very cool. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Thank you, Ann, for coming on. Guys, be sure to check out the podcast, as always, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. We also upload every week to YouTube, youtube.com/Spiraling Ministries. So be sure to go and give us a check us out, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.